We have discussed starting a new project, what parent pages are, adding and scaling images, and next we're going to do layout and concept. We are in the PowerPoint right now, and I'm going to go over just a few slides before we get into InDesign. And this is just a really great diagram or example of different ways to draw out your layout. It is definitely worthwhile, even though you're using a computer program, to still draw it out in paper and to think about it before you start laying it out. Also, this heavy copy we are going to come back to, but it is a great layout to use for lots of text. These are just some examples of different layouts. This is probably the one that we're most commonly going to use or close to it for mood boards. And it's a great clean layout, but lots of interest. This is, of course, a little bit more chaotic, a little bit more fun, but it's still laid out with lots of text and it makes sense. It's got an order to it. And then here's a list of other types of layouts that we just won't go over in the video, but definitely if you're interested, go to this website and look into more types of layout. Quickly before we move on to the layouts that I've created specifically for this project and that I'll be using throughout the 3 videos, I did want to talk specifically about creating certain layouts that are interior design specific. And so I've created 3 for you. One obviously looks very much like a title sheet that you would make in AutoCAD or even Revit. And so there is something very nice about creating a project that makes it look like a drafted set of construction documents. So you can use this idea for one of your projects, your mood boards, etc. You can also go a little bit more professional, a little traditional, depending on what your project is also displaying. Or you can do something a little bit more fun and contemporary, lots more color, etc. But I did want you to notice how I'm kind of naming some of these sections. You're going to want to add, FF&E to these projects. You're going to want to talk about client profiles, goals and challenges. And you'll also want to put in your concept statements and sketches. Okay? So these are just a few layout ideas that are specific to interior design. So we are going to now continue on to the projects that I have made and talk more about layout. So here we are in Photoshop. These are the photos linked to the InDesign. So theoretically, I'm going to come over here, change it to black and white. I want to flatten the image and then save it because then it's going to save as a JPEG. Okay, so now I'm going to go over into InDesign. So now, as you can see, it has this little alert here at this photo, and that is because we have changed the photo in Photoshop, and it now wants us to update it. Date link, and there you go. It's changed it to black and white. So now this one isn't showing up yet as needing to be updated. So we're going to try that one more time. There we go. Now it's updated. There it is in our links and update. So then it changed it to black and white. So I've altered that. We're going to throw some text in here, but first I want to actually go back up. And I've laid this first one out a little bit. I put in some boxes. We can write some text in there, do whatever. I overlapped these a little bit for just a little bit more of a, chaotic, fun layout. All right. So I have decided to actually put a white box around this so that it separates from these larger photos in the background. So I am going to copy this box and repeat it. Line it up with the existing. I'm going to choose arrange and then send to back, which then means I'm going to need to send these to back. And remember, these photos are a little bit of a different size sometimes, the wideness. So I'm going to need to adjust the boxes to the image. Grab that again, move it over here. And of course, when it gets printed, we're not going to see those blue lines around it. So that'll just look like white space. So I am going to actually grab all of these boxes using my shift and clicking on them. I'm going to go to copy and then paste, send back.
Okay, so now we're going to talk a little bit about adding borders to images. This is pretty simple and straightforward, but there are definitely so many ways that you can add borders to images. One of the easiest ways, or the most efficient ways that I like to use, is to just click on an image, and down in the lower left corner you can double click on the stroke option to select and set the color of your border. And I can bump this up in scale up here to make it just a little bit thicker so we can see it. So let's say I want to apply that same border, the same thickness, the same color to this image down here. Well, rather than try to remember the exact color and the exact stroke weight for this image, I would actually want to use what's called an object styles. So if you don't know where your object styles are, don't worry. That's easily accessed by going up to Window, down to Styles, and you'll notice that there are a whole bunch of different options for styles here. All of these can be super great to learn how to utilize when you're using InDesign. They really help create a more effective and efficient workflow. So the one that we're going to be using for this exercise is object styles. So go ahead and click on that one, and it pulls open this panel here. So it's pretty simple. Basically, all I have to do is click on this image here to select it, and then down in my object styles panel, I want to click on this plus icon here, just to the left of the trash can that says create new style. So I'm going to go ahead and click on that, and it's going to automatically populate a new style down at the bottom that's called Object Style 1. So I can double click on this, and this will allow me to go ahead and give it a style name. So I'm just going to call this brown border and click OK. So now all I have to do is click on anything else in the document that I want to apply that border to. So I'm going to click on this image here, and I just need to select which object style I want to apply to it. So I'm going to apply the brown border, and now you see it's got the same exact color and width of border as this image here. Super easy. It's a great way to add borders and any other sort of visual elements to an image. So if I double click on this again, you can see you have so many options that you can apply to your object style. So the color fill that you have on an object, or the stroke or corner options, can all be applied. Also, if it has any text wrap settings, all of this stuff can be applied and copied to multiple objects within a document, which is very handy. You also have the opportunity to copy other effects, such as if this object had a drop shadow or some sort of bevel and emboss effect, you could apply that to multiple objects across the document with just a few simple clicks. So super easy. This is a great feature. I definitely recommend doing some research on object, paragraph, and character styles, because those are very helpful in InDesign. Another great feature to be aware of is the feature called Paste in Place. So essentially what that allows you to do is when you copy an item, it allows you to paste it in the same exact place that you got it from in the document. This can be super handy. So for example, when I go to press Command or Control C to copy this item, and then I press Command or Control V to paste, it just automatically pastes it right in the center of my document, which most of the time is not a big deal. But let's say, for example, I'm going to go ahead and create a new page here. Let's say on this page, I want this image to paste to the same exact spot on this page. Well, rather than going and creating guides and doing all the math to try and figure out where it actually exists on this page, all I have to do is press Command or Control C to copy that image. and then scroll down to the second page, and I can right-click on the page and press Paste in Place. And it went ahead and pasted it exactly in the same spot that it got it from on the first page. So that can be super handy for creating layouts that have similar placements from page to page. It allows you to maintain consistency in terms of placement of images or text without taking out all that extra work that would be required to figure out where that object needs to be placed. So super good. Again, that's just right click, paste in place. You can also go up to edit and find paste in place as well.
So the biggest part of this is just the click and drag, and you have control over it while you're still holding onto it, and then click and drag again, and you have control over that point on the right spot and move it the way you want it. It's just easier to manipulate it while you still got a hold of it.
So when you're adding text to a path, one of the easiest ways to change where that text actually goes on the path is to use the selection tool. So a lot of beginners will oftentimes use the space bar at the beginning of text to sort of push it along to where they want it to go. But one of the problems with that is if you go a little too far, you can sometimes create an error, an overset text error, which you can see has happened down here at the bottom. It also will sort of mess around with some of your alignment options. So when you have a big section of spaces or tabs at the beginning of text, and then when you go to center it, it oftentimes won't truly be centered with that text. So instead of using the space bar to add spaces to the beginning of text on a path, one of the easier ways to actually switch to the selection tool. And you'll notice that what appears are these little handles at either end of the line that you've created. And so you can actually grab these handles and use it to sort of push the text along. This allows you to kind of sandwich the text a little bit more neatly. You can also see that there's a tiny little handle here as well, which also allows you to just shift where the actual text goes on that line. So if I wanted to, I could actually pull it down here and have it be upside down on the line if I wanted to. So there's all sorts of actual interesting things that I could do here with using the selection tool in tandem with the type on a path tool. Another thing that's good to know is that you can actually still edit the path even after you've added text to it. It's actually pretty easy. So there's a couple of ways that you can do that. The first is by right-clicking on the pen tool and switching to the Convert Direction Point tool. So what this will allow me to do is actually convert some of these more jagged corners into more smooth curves, which will certainly be helpful in creating text that's a little bit more legible. Once I've sort of added curves to this path, I can also then go in there with the direct selection tool and click on these paths to sort of manipulate them and move them around to wherever I want. So you can certainly still have quite a bit of control over a path once you've added text to it, which is great. Another thing that you can do is edit the path itself in terms of color. So let's say I want this text to go on this path, but I don't really want to see the line. Well, that's really easy. All I have to do is just click on this here and click on this option, right click on this option down here and apply no color to the stroke. And so now we just have text still following that path, but now the path is just invisible. Another great thing to be aware of is under type options, you can go down to type on a path and down to options. This pulls up all sorts of fun things that you can kind of click around on and play around with that sort of change the way the text appears on that path. So those can be kind of fun to play around with as well to get sort of different effects.
Back up here using my control and minus, and we're going to move on. So I'm not going to put any text in either of these or that one, but let's go to this one, the heavy copy. We're going to go to type tool. We're going to lay down a box. Okay, and that is 12 right now. I'm going to keep it at 12 for now. We're going to change the font, and I'm going to do something very easy to read, but I do want it to look like it, actual type. It's in paragraph style. I'm just doing letters. I'm not thinking about what I'm writing at all. So there's a few things that you can do with this. I'm going to click on my arrow so that I'm not grabbing onto anything I don't want to. And you can change several things here. You can change the font size, obviously. You can change the space between each line. You can change the space between each letter. You can do it in such an opposite way where they just jumble together. And then if you ever just want to reset this, I always click over it and then just hit 0 and enter. And it goes back to the default. Here, obviously, we've worked with these before, but you can align the text. And I'm actually going to indent that first line because what I'm going to do is create another text box, and I'm going to make that much larger, and we're just going to put that right in front to start the new paragraph. And if you noticed when I got small, that red box is telling you that there's more text in there than what you see. And so it's a good way to indicate whether or not you've made the text box too small. It always lets you know.
Okay, so now we're going to cover how to create drop caps. So drop caps are basically just a fancy way to say that the first letter of a paragraph or the first characters in a paragraph are enlarged. Let me go ahead and just fill this text box that I've created with some placeholder text. And I'm just going to highlight the first paragraph here. Over in my paragraph settings over here is where we have the option to edit that drop cap. So this option here on the left allows me to tell InDesign how large I want that first character to be, but I also have the option to determine how many characters of that paragraph it will enlarge. So I could even go so far as to enlarge the first word of a paragraph. So I don't just have to do a letter, I can do as many as I want, and I can make them about as large as I want as well. I can also indent this paragraph, of course, by using this option here. That allows me to sort of manually change the indentation, but I can also go in here at the beginning of the paragraph and press the tab bar, which then will require me to create just a few more characters because it does view that tab as a character. So you'll have to add an extra character or two so that that first letter is still enlarged. You still have options here to kind of play around with. So you can select the first letter or the first characters that you've enlarged, and you can start playing around with different typefaces. And you still have all the flexibility that you have with change the spacing between those characters essentially. So I can give this just a little bit more room by playing around with the kerning here, and it's going to go ahead and move this whole first 3 lines of text that are up against this character just a little bit more breathing room, which is really good to know that you have that ability just by playing around with the kerning here.
So if you go up to type up at the top, these are basically from font to size. This is everything relating to text. And here's you can change your character styles, you can change your paragraph styles, and you can basically do anything here that you can do over here or over here. It's just a different way to get to it, but that's where those options are. So we're going to name it copy heavy. Okay, so you can paragraph styles, and then you can duplicate that style, you can delete that style. You can load more, and then style options opens up this box so that you have a lot of control over many different pieces of that paragraph. Okay, we're not going to go into this a lot, but just so that you can see some of those options. So I went ahead and played with this a little bit I did change the size of that T, and I found how to fill space, just general text, but it does lay out just if you were to write. And so the way I did that was, it's at your type, you can go to fill with placeholder text, and that fills the box once you've already created a text box. Then you just come over here to type and then fill with text. Actually, you can come over here. This is why that paragraph style is really important, is because then you don't have to go back to this one and say, okay, well, what was that? How many points was this at? And how do I want to make that again? If you were to save this, then you would just type what you want and then click on the paragraph, save copy heavy that you want, and it would save it the way you want. This is 12 and it's going to be at 25, just like the other one. And then if you wanted to like really truly make this look like a newspaper or something, then you would put, maybe a page number up here. Depending on the type of font you're using, it gives you different options. So you'll notice here when you're picking them out that it says, it'll give you that TT or the O. And basically that just means that you have different options with how you manipulate that font. You can always, again, just like any other box, you can manipulate the corners and change the shape of it. And this is just if you wanted to create an outline around the text. And let's move on. We're going to go to this one now and put some text in the back. So this is at 12 right now. We're going to do another one where we write the same exact thing. And the other way I could have done that is just to have grabbed this one, copy, and pasted. Oh, there it is. Always make sure that when you're copying and pasting, you're looking around, because sometimes they put them out in space, not where you're actually working. And I'm going to change the font to 18. And I personally like tightening up these boxes just so that they don't get in my way, because with a lot of different things going on, text boxes, shape boxes, etc., then they're going to all be overlapping, and then they're going to be hard to grab what you actually want. So I tend to take the time to tighten up those boxes. And see, there's that red square indicating that we've got text. It's not in the box. And then these are fun to play with also. They're going to change. These are all just your indentations of the actual paragraph, like all of the text that's in the box. Oh, and if you click here with the dots, it gives you more options to play with. See, that changes the tilt of it. That controls where it lays in the box, which is kind of a weird concept. I'm sure when you're doing a lot more text in a box, then it matters. But I tend to not use this for the type of text that I use. That clumps it all together, that spreads it out. Especially with really hard to see text, something really fancy, it's easier to see if you spread it apart. So there is that alternative to picking font that maybe is a little harder to see, but then manipulating it. You want to make sure that it's big enough for people to see once it's printed out. And that is kind of hard to tell when you're here manipulating it. 12 is kind of the standard for, anything that you read, it's going to be at a 12 font. So that's kind of where I start. I don't ever really go any smaller than that. Headers, anything that you want to make sure gets seen, I would do at least at an 18 or a 24, but definitely do a print check if you're concerned about the text. And so you can just come over here and you can export, and it'll just save a PDF really quickly. Well, I say really quickly, but I've got 8 pages here with a lot of information on it, so it would take a bit to actually do. But you can do a test and just kind of look at it as a PDF and see how well before you start like truly laying out a lot of text. I don't really love this layout, honestly, but we'll just lay something out, because you can also do vertical text. All right, so once again, I played with this a little bit while I wasn't recording, and I actually couldn't find a way to do vertical text. So what I did was I actually just did a space in between each letter and laid it out manually myself, and then spaced it the way that I wanted to. So just kind of an overview of text. I know that we didn't truly go through a lot, but a lot of it really is just playing with the options and seeing what works best for you. Saving paragraphs and character styles is great if you're going to use that over and over again and you don't want to, have to manipulate it every single time or wonder what the font size was when you did this thing. So definitely be utilizing those options here in type. So there are 3 ways to get to text and font in InDesign. Just like everything else, there's usually several ways to go about it. So you've always got your tool here on the left-hand side. You can do type tool or type on a path, which you use the pen tool to do first, or you can manipulate it here. You've also got type on path option here. You can change the font and size here. You can, we didn't go over this, but you can do bulleted and numberless. You can also do special characters. Quotation marks is great to have. And then you also have over here in your properties, when you are in the text tool, you have everything out here on your right hand side. And so draw out a box just so that we can see how it changes. You've got your paragraph and character styles. You can save specifically named paragraphs and use them over and over again. You can change your fill and your stroke. If you are making really large letters, you can do a stroke line and do an outline to do a border to your font, which is pretty fun sometimes. All of your fonts, and just know that you can go and download tons of free fonts and get them into your InDesign. Here's how you control spacing. You've got more here. Alignment, bullet and numbering is also here. Insert foot and endnote. Footnotes were also up here in the type at the top. And then you can also fill to place hold text here, as we did on the copy heavy. All right, so I'm going to actually delete that because I don't want it there. So you have now finished part 2, beautiful Colorado in InDesign tutorial. So thank you for joining us for these videos, and I'm hoping that they're helping. If you want to learn more, there is a part 3 of the video series for the tutorial. So please watch that. And if you have any questions or concerns, definitely contact the SLC. Thank you.